Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really plunging into the world of Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. It's such a compelling novel.
Absolutely. And specifically, we're looking at one of literature's most, well, enduring and maybe enigmatic figures.
Exactly. You probably know the classic story, but we want to go a bit deeper today, explore something pretty fascinating. The surprising power and unique perspective of the Victorian governess as embodied by Jane herself.
Right. We've gathered quite a bit of analysis looking closely at the novel, especially chapter 8, but also the broader cultural context and, some really interesting facts about the book's legacy, too.
Yeah, lots to unpack.
Our mission for you today really is to uncover how Jane's position, which seems so subordinate, actually gives her this extraordinary freedom and insight.
How she manages to challenge those rigid Victorian conventions.
And why this story still resonates,
Yeah.
why we still connect with those anxieties about women in society today.
Okay, so let's start right there with Jane as a governess, specifically her literal marginalization.
Yeah.
Think about that scene at the Starnfield house party. She's physically hidden, isn't she? Tucked behind a crimson curtain.
It's such a strong image.
And it echoes her past, right? At Gateshead, in the window seat, again with a curtain. The red moreen curtain drawn nearly close. What's that really about, this constant hiding?
Well, it's fascinating because it's not just like a physical detail. It quite literally shows her social position.
Okay.
In Victorian society, a governess needed all the respectability of ladyhood without ever enjoying its status. That's the key phrase.
So look the part, but don't be the part.
Exactly. They had to seem at home in genteel company, fit in with the upper crust without ever being truly accepted into it.
Wow.
They had to model all those conventional feminine accomplishments, music, drawing, French, dress sense, basically everything that made a woman marriageable,
Right.
but without ever looking to be fulfilled in that stage herself. It's just deeply contradictory.
That sounds like an incredibly isolating, difficult tightrope to walk. Being a lady, but without any actual benefits or security?
It absolutely was. There was this writer, Anna Brownell Jameson, who in 1846 called the governess's situation ambiguous and difficult. She pointed out they expected neither companionship nor sympathy, just discomfort inseparable from the governess's position.
Mold.
And you really feel that painful loneliness, that sort of degradation in Jane Eyre. It clearly draws from Charlotte Bronte's own life.
Right. Bronte herself wrote about it so powerfully to Elizabeth Gaskell, didn't she? It really gives you the blueprint for Jane.
Oh, definitely. She said something like, if teaching only were requisite, it would be smooth and easy.
Yeah.
But it is the living in other people's houses, the estrangement from one's real character, the adoption of a cold, frigid, apathetic exterior that is painful. You can just feel that cost.
You really can. So beyond the individual hardship, there's this wider cultural thing happening.
Yeah, that's crucial. Scholars like Catherine Hughes and Mary Poovey, they point out that all the attention on the governess's distress was kind of disproportionate to the extent of the problem.
So it wasn't just about governesses themselves.
No, it suggests the governess became this symbol for much bigger cultural anxieties, worries about social respectability, sexual morality, financial self-reliance, all of that.
Okay.
Poovey argues the governess was so significant because she was right there at the crossroads of two major Victorian ideas about women.
Which were?
The figure who represented the domestic ideal, the angel in the house, and the figure who, just by existing, kind of threatened to destroy it.
Because she was independent, earning her own money.
Exactly. Professionally independent and also sexually independent, single, marriageable but vulnerable, and living so close to the men of the house.
Wow, yeah.
The anxiety about her sexual neutrality was apparently so strong, it even linked her in the Victorian mind to the fallen woman and the lunatic.
That's a heavy burden for what seems like such a quiet role.
It really is. And this tension, this paradox, is exactly what Jane Eyre exploits so brilliantly. Really complex, powerful ways.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting, right? Jane's precarious independence, having to find her own work, actually lets her sort of ape the traditional trajectory of the male hero, like David Copperfield or Nicholas Nickleby.
Yeah, that's a great point.
How is that kind of journey, that self-made story, impossible for a more comfortable heroine back then?
But it's precisely because Jane doesn't have that social comfort, that security, that she's sort of freed from its rules.
Ah, okay.
The very disadvantages of her situation give her this unique perspective on what conventional femininity was supposed to be. And that perspective could find, legitimate and safe expression because it was just part of the governess's known plight.
So not being a proper lady gave her a different kind of freedom.
Paradoxically, yes, she wasn't bound by the same rigid expectations. She literally had to go out and make her own way, which was, a typically male story back then.
And Jane certainly wants more than that confined life. You hear her longing for a power of vision, which might reach the busy world. Towns, leads, regions full of life I had heard of but never seen. She says, I desired more of practical experience, more of intercourse with my kind than was here within my reach. She wants life.
And Catherine Hughes suggests that Jane the governess becomes this daring alter ego for Bronte and also a kind of surrogate and spokeswoman for all middle-class women because she was exempt from some of the more constricting aspects of ladyhood.
Which gives her this privileged vision, as you called it.
Exactly. Outwardly, she plays the part conscientiously adjusted to her situation. She even says, I dressed myself with care, solicitous to be neat, and put on my black frock, Quaker-like as it was.
Oh, right. Very subdued.
But inwardly, she consciously exercises her role as this watchful observer.
She sees everything. Rochester's faults, Adèle's sort of spoilt inanity, Blanche Ingram's inner deadness and poverty of life. And this unique position being everywhere and nowhere at once. The inside or outside is like a release, isn't it? A protean release, allowing her to break free from that strict governess stereotype.
And it's fascinating how that perspective is kind of analogous to the novelist's position, especially a woman novelist like Charlotte Bronte, who also had this sort of uncertain place in society.
You really see Jane using that power at the Thornfield house party.
Oh, yeah.
She starts as the victimized inferior, overhearing them talk about her, but then she just turns the tables internally. She exposes the poverty of their minds with all the authority of an omniscient narrator's definitive word.
It's brilliant.
That internal takedown of Blanche Ingram is just devastatingly quiet. She was very showy, but she was not genuine.
Her mind was poor, her heart barren by nature.
Nothing blooms spontaneously on that soil. It's such a powerful judgment, showing her real strengths.
It absolutely is, which brings us nicely to the power dynamics between Jane and Rochester. How that master-servant ambiguity gets mutually exploited.
Right. Rochester just summons her, doesn't he? For company more agreeable to his intellect and tastes, expecting her to just perform. Draw you out, learn more of you, therefore speak.
Yeah, quite imperious.
But Jane's response is just classic. Instead of speaking, I smiled. And not a very complacent or submissive smile either.
Oh, yeah.
Her silence isn't passive at all. It's described as both proper resistance and just plain stubborn. An insistence on a more voluntary liberty. She won't just be commanded.
Exactly. She holds her ground.
Yeah.
And then she hits him with that famous challenge, laying out her terms.
Oh, yes. I don't think, sir, you have a right to command me merely because you are older or because you have seen more of the world.
Your claim to superiority depends on the use you have made of your time and experience. Boom.
Such a direct hit, asserting intellectual moral equality. Amazing for the time.
Totally. And this push and pull continues in that memorable gypsy fortune teller scene.
Yes, where Rochester disguises himself, taking on this subordinate outsider role.
Right. And that switch allows for this really witty power play and sexual negotiation.
Yeah.
Jane's responses are so sharp.
When the gypsy tries to make her scared, why don't you tremble?
I'm not cold.
Why don't you turn pale?
I am not sick.
Why don't you consult my art?
I'm not silly. Just completely unfazed. As John Maynard says, their repartee is one of the joys in the novel.
It really is. And you sense Rochester genuinely needs her, despite his bluster.
He does. He calls her the recipient of secrets because of her gravity, considerateness, and caution. He admits it's impossible to be conventional with you.
Which leads to something more equal, doesn't it? Greater equality than this standard romantic relationship, like the one he might have had with Blanche Ingram.
Exactly. And Jane feels it too. She says, at times, as if he were my relation rather than my master. There's this real intimacy developing born from their unusual situation.
So then when he proposes marriage, this powerful paradox emerges. As soon as she's assumed to be Jane Rochester and he wants to shower her with dresses and jewels, Jane feels what? a loss.
Yeah, she almost immediately senses a loss of their privileged sense of equality. She feels ridiculous, like an ape in a harlequin's jacket, a
Yes.
jay in borrowed
And
plumes.
declares, I will not be your English Celine Varens, his French mistress.
Right. And she refuses to give up her job, her governessing slavery, until the actual wedding.
Which is described as one of the most strident attacks on marriage as institutionalized slavery in any fiction of the period. She values that independence, even the hard parts.
She really does. But the deepest meaning of their bond isn't about status games. It comes through in the fire scene.
When she saves his life.
The deepest service.
Hmm.
And when he tries to put them on equal footing, saying, "You have saved my life. I have a pleasure in owing you so immense a debt."
Jane just shuts it down. Good night again, sir. There is no debt, benefit, burden, obligation in the case.
Yeah, it's such a key moment. It suggests that love, real love, has nothing to do with servitude in that narrow sense,
Mm.
but it is about some higher ideal of service, mutual service, perhaps.
A spiritual connection, not just master-servant.
Exactly. Okay, so moving beyond Rochester for a moment, Jane also finds this really powerful expression through her art.
Her paintings, right. The cormorant, the iceberg, the evening star.
Yeah. They're described as visionary landscapes, wild, dramatic, uncertain of meaning. They seem continuous with the dream life Jane experiences throughout the novel.
So not just hobbies, but reflections of her inner self.
Definitely. An expression of Jane's inner life, a kind of safety valve in loneliness and her confidant.
But even there, she feels that creative struggle, doesn't she? Those romantic creative anxieties.
Yeah, the contrast between my idea and my handiwork. I'd imagined something which I was quite powerless to realize. That gap between vision and execution.
Which feels very real for any artist, but maybe especially then.
And you can connect this directly to Charlotte Bronte's own writing. Think about Jane's restlessness up on the third floor at Thornfield, finding relief in her mind's eye, letting her inward ear listen to a tale that was never ended, a tale my imagination created and narrated continuously, quickened with all of incident, life, fire, feeling that I desired and had not in my actual existence.
Wow. That really shows how imagination could, well, compensate for the privations of female experience back then.
Absolutely. And it also links to those broader anxieties for women writers. Sandra Gilbert and Susan Gubar, the famous feminist critics.
Right, the mad woman in the attic.
Exactly. They suggested that this fear women writers had about their own creative imagination, like they were trespassing on male territory, helped create monsters like Bertha Mason.
So Bertha is like a symptom, displaced symptoms of authorial anxiety.
That's their argument, yeah. A projection of fears about their own creative power. Ultimately, Jane Eyre feels like Charlotte Bronte's own deep artistic and personal, even ontological struggle. A struggle to just be and let her life authentically shape the novel.
And the book itself reflects that. Its mix of styles.
Yeah, it's very amorphousness, the mix of genres, voices, realities, like Jane's wild paintings. It feels like evidence of that huge creative effort.
Which leads us to its incredible legacy. It's amazing to think it came out the same year as Thackeray's Vanity Fair 1847. Both put the governess right at the heart of the English novel.
Yeah, a huge year for the governess novel. But they took such different approaches.
Right. Becky Sharp in Vanity Fair climbs the ladder through, well, disreputable means, theft, fraud, deceit, a kind of cynically attractive sexual exploitation.
Whereas Jane Eyre is this authentically passionate first-person protagonist, plain, oppressed, and mistreated, but offering this incredibly penetrating analysis of the female psyche based on her integrity.
But then you get someone like Terry Eagleton, the literary critic, who throws a bit of a curveball.
Ah, yes.
He argues the difference is more apparent than actual. He sees Bronte's heroines as this extraordinarily contradictory amalgam.
Smoldering rebelliousness and prim conventionalism.
Gushing romantic fantasy and canny hard-headedness.
Quivering sensitivity and blunt rationality. Quite a mix.
He argues this contradiction is directly linked to their roles as governesses, caught between that external harsh mechanical necessity of being a servant.
And an internal one of emotional hungering.
Yeah. And for Eagleton, Jane's job and orphan status basically make her a free, blank, pre-social atom. Stripped down, free from normal social ties, vulnerable, yes, but also uniquely free to move through the class system. He suggests the novel's deep bourgeois ethic uses her conventional side as a tool for self-advancement.
That's a really interesting take. Makes you think.
It really does. And speaking of interesting, it's incredible that Jane Eyre, which feels so perfect was actually Charlotte Bronte's second novel published. The Professor was rejected loads of times.
Yeah, persistence paid off.
And she published Jane Eyre under the name Currer Bell, didn't she? Because the sisters did not like to declare ourselves women, fearing biased reviews.
But people figured it out, right? Reviewers like George Henry Lewes and Elizabeth Barrett Browning apparently knew it was a woman's writing.
They did. And here's a fun fact for you. Well, maybe surprising. A 2009 Mills and Boon poll voted Mr. Rochester the most romantic character in literature. Beat Mr. Darcy.
Wow, really? Ahead of Darcy. That is surprising.
But there's also such sadness in Charlotte Bronte's story after the fame hit.
Oh, absolutely. Her siblings, Branwell, Emily, and they all died so quickly. Between 47 when Jane Eyre came out and 49 when Shirley was published, left her completely devastated. She wrote about the house being all silent, the rooms empty.
Just heartbreaking. But the book itself lived on so powerfully. Its influence is huge.
Definitely. You see echoes in Elizabeth Barrett Browning's Aurora Leigh, the hero blinded by fire.
And Henry James's The Turn of the Screw, with the governess worrying about an insane, unmentionable relative kept in unsuspected confinement. A clear nod to Bertha.
And it hit the stage almost immediately, within a year, though apparently they often toned down Jane's rebelliousness, made her more fragile.
Interesting. It also famously inspired Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca, didn't it? That whole haunted by the first wife thing.
A direct line, yeah. And then maybe one of those significant responses, Jean Rey's Wide Sargasso Sea in 1966.
Giving Bertha Antoinette her own story.
Exactly. A prequel showing her as a victim of her Creole heritage, exploited by Rochester. A really powerful reframing.
And then there are the films, so many. 12 silent ones and a talkie even before the famous 1943 version with Joan Fontaine and Orson Welles.
Plus all the modern ones. Its staying power is just undeniable.
Absolutely.
So wrapping this all up, what does this mean for you listening? We've taken quite a deep dive into Jane Eyre's world, hopefully showing how that seemingly restrictive governess role became, for Jane, this unexpected source of power.
Yeah, a conduit for unique insight, freedom, even subversion. Her disadvantages kind of became her strengths, letting her be this daring new kind of female hero.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, it really reminds you how literature captures those complex societal anxieties, doesn't it? And gives a voice to people who might otherwise be unheard.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, our listener. Maybe consider how limitations or challenges in your own life, if you look at them differently, from a unique perspective, might actually open up unexpected paths.
Paths to freedom, insight, maybe even a different kind of power.
What perceived disadvantages might actually be your most potent, maybe even subversive tools? Something to think about.